let's get started. Um, First of all, thank you guys for coming. Uh, Hopefully we'll teach you some, we'll show you how to make, cool customized LED acrylic lamp. Uh, and also, maybe learn a thing or two about Inkscape and vector software while we're doing it. So yeah, the topic here is we're going to make an LED lamp, mainly the design using Inkscape and a free vector website where we can basically download free to use images that we can convert into a cuttable design that we'll use on the laser we have in the MakerSpace. So yeah, I'm actually streaming my screen right now. Can everyone see that as well? Okay, awesome. Everyone here also has Inkscape installed, correct? Okay, awesome. So yeah, Inkscape is the main thing we're going to be using here. That's basically the first step here, but it looks like everyone does have it. I'll also point out, like, as we finish each step, I'll, ask everyone, like, if they need more time or they're ready. And at some points, we might just kind of move on, even if you're still on one part. But it's fine because, one, I'm recording this, so you can always reference it later. And two, once we kind of get towards the end, we can always make sure everyone's caught up. So, yeah, the first thing after making sure Inkscape is installed is we're going to want to go to this website right here. It's called vecteezy.com. It's vecteezy.com. And we can basically just get, free images from this. You can basically look up any, type of image that you want. So which one should I do? I'll do cats. I like cats, so that's a good one. And you can see that once you put your term in, it gives you a lot of different options here that look a lot different from each other. One thing we want to do first is right here where it says license type, we're going to want to hit free license because there are also paid designs on Vecteezy. But choosing this free license option, just make sure we get only things that are free to use. So once you're here and you look your design up, some things you're going to want to look for in your images are ones with mostly blank backgrounds. So you can see right here that these kinds of designs should work pretty well. These two right here. This one on the right, not as much because we basically need the image isolated so we can actually get a outline that we can use to cut the shape out of the acrylic. And something like this, the right cat image, would just be really hard to pull this actual cat shape out of. So we want to avoid those. I mean, you could just engrave the entire square design, but that doesn't look that good. So we mainly want to look for stuff that just has a blank background, because that just works a lot better. And you can choose either things that are just solid outlines like this, or you could do stuff with a little more detail like this. Do keep in mind that as you add more detail, sometimes it doesn't always come out as well as flat graphic designs, such as something like this or this. But they do work. And it's also worth pointing out that even if it's in color here on the website, it's not going to be in color on the actual cutout. Anything with color is inevitably going to be converted to grayscale. So just keep that in mind as well. So yeah, we're basically going to go and select an image that we're going to want to use. I will find one for myself to do here. I'll try and pick a more detailed one just so I can kind of like walk everyone through those steps as well. So let's see. I guess I could do this one. It's simple. So when you find it, you just go to free download and it'll ask you if you want to do a free license or a pro license. We don't need to worry about the pro license. We're not using it commercially, or we're not trying to access like paid stuff. We just want the free image. We're just going to be using this for our home, so that's okay. And okay, so once you download it, depending on which internet browser you're on and which operating system you're on, they'll be in different locations. I'm on a PC with Chrome, so it just kind of puts it right here in this download bar on the bottom. With Macs on Safari, I believe the way you can access your downloads is a button here along the top of the browser in Safari. But so we're going to go into the design we're choosing, and we need to extract it from the compressed folder first. I have some actual steps on how to extract for each different operating system. So on PC, actually, how many people are using Macs currently? Okay, we got one Mac. Anyone else? If you also want, you can just leave a message in the chat, just so I can also see that. Let me pull the chat up real quick. So I guess anyone who, you could just leave a message so I know. I don't see anyone else messaging, so I'll assume everyone else is on PC. But yeah, so to extract on PC, once you open the folder, there's just going to be a big extract button right here. We're just going to click that. It's going to ask you where you want to extract it to. You don't have to worry about that. Just hit extract. It's basically going to extract the same location the compressed folder is in, which is the downloads folder. So if I go to my downloads here, you can see I've got the compressed folder and the extracted one. The extracted one is the one we want to use because we can't take files from an extracted folder into Inkscape. And you can actually see, this is another thing I need to mention, is that this one only came with an EPS file, which we don't need to worry about. We're not using that format, and a JPEG format. Sometimes they come with SVGs, which kind of just gets rid of a few steps, but we don't want that to limit what you can do. So if you only have a JPEG or a PNG, that's totally fine as well. There's just a couple more steps it takes to convert it. So I'll show everyone how to do that. And then after that, I'll show everyone how to do the, how to convert an already existing SVG as well. Okay, so, and for math to extract, all you have to do is double click the compressed folder and it should expand it so you can access those files. So it's really easy on Mac. Fortunately, that's kind of Mac's thing, is everything's simple on that. So yeah, Once everybody has their folder extracted, we can actually go ahead and open Inkscape up. And let me close some of these tabs because I already had them open, but you probably aren't going to see these yet. So once we open Inkscape, this is what we usually see first off, just kind of a blank artboard. One thing we want to do first is adjust our artboard so that it represents the acrylic we're going to be cutting on. So you're going to want to access these properties called the document properties. And the way you do that is really simple. On PC, you just hold Control, Shift, and D, and it should open that up. On Mac, it's Command, Shift, D, and it'll just bring open, this, this area where we can kind of change the way the document looks. So the first thing we're going to want to do is change the display units right here up at the top. We're going to want to change that from millimeters and then go and select inches because the acrylic we're working with is inches, and I'm sure everyone understands inches a bit better. So yeah, that's the first thing you're going to want to do. So I'll just give everyone a second to do that, kind of like take the options in and everything. You good there, Karen? I saw you had to step away for a bit.
Yeah, I can't get the document properties to come out up on the Mac. You said it was Command Shift D.
It should be, but if that's not working, you can also just go to File and then go to Document Properties, and that'll open it up as well.
Got it. Thank you.
So the next thing we're going to want to do is go down here to where it says Orientation. We're going to want to change the units here again from millimeters to inches. And you can see that it's going to change the values in width and height when we change the units. So right now it's at about 8.3 by 11.7. We're going to want to change that to be the actual acrylic. So what we're going to put in is a width of 8 inches and then a height of 12 inches. That is basically the size of the acrylic sheets we're using. And then once we've done that, we're actually good on the document properties, and we can go ahead and close it out. We won't have to deal with those again, fortunately. So now doing that, we have just this 8 by 12 artboard here. And what we're going to want to do is bring our downloaded image into Inkscape. And to do that, you just go to File, Import, and it's going to bring up a window where you can browse your files and bring stuff in. So for me, I have my downloads in my quick access, but you can also find everything here in the dropdown. So I'm just going to navigate to my downloads here, and you can see the folder with the cat is right here. It's got the license information as well as the image. As you can see there, like I said, there was also an EPS file, but Inkscape doesn't like that file. It doesn't use it, so it's only showing us the JPEG. And I'm just going to select it and hit open. When you do that, it's going to give you this little window with import options. Don't worry about the options. You can just take the defaults. So when it opens up, just hit OK. And it'll import our image right here for us. So let me just make sure. Is everyone doing OK? again, if anyone has any issues, you can also send a message in chat. And if you're also really struggling, you can also screen share so I can actually see what you're doing. So yeah, I will take the silence as everyone has it working. So, okay, it looks like we do have a question from Elliot. Were you there for when we were on VectEasy? Okay, yeah, I see you missed. So I will just real quick, I'll try and run through this quicker than I did before. So you're just going to want to go to this website, vecteasy.com. It's going to take us right here. And then in this category, you're going to want to put whatever you're looking for. I did cat last time. I'll do it again this time. It's going to bring you to all this stuff. You're going to want to hit free license in the license type to make sure what we're using is free and we don't have to pay for it. And then you're just going to want to select something here. This is the one I chose. You're going to go to free download, hit free license, and your download should start automatically. So that's how you download the image. I am going to move on to the next step though. So once we have our image open, it does depend on what format we have, what the steps we have to take are. So I'm going to do JPEG first. And the way you can know whether or not it's a JPEG or an SVG, or a JPEG or PNG versus an SVG, because JPEG and PNG kind of work this similarly in the software, is if you double click your image. If it's an SVG, you'll see a bunch of nodes, a bunch of tiny diamonds pop up, which are what we call nodes, path nodes. I'll show you what one looks like right now. So I'm just kind of drawing a shape here. So this is an actual vector shape, and you can see when I double click on it, I get these nodes basically which control the shape. It works a bit differently than a raster image, which is a JPEG or a PNG like this. It doesn't have any node data because it's just basically a collection of colors and pixels. There's nothing we can actually directly manipulate here like a vector image. So what we have to do first is convert this JPEG into a vector collection of vector shapes. Because vectors are actually the only shapes that the laser can identify. If you just sent the laser cutter a JPEG, it's not going to know what to do with that. So yeah, like I said, we have to convert this into a vector. And
Zach, I'm going to pop in really quick. We have
Sure.
a question here. I'm not sure you were able to get to it or not from Elliot. How do you?
I just answered it.
You were able to. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You good, Elliot? Yes, no?
Got it? Yeah, that was from Elliot.
Okay. So fortunately, converting it to a vector is actually really easy. It requires very little effort. So what we're going to want to do is just select our image. You'll know when it has this dotted line around it. Then we're going to go to Path. We're going to go to Trace Bitmap. And this tool essentially looks at a JPEG or PNG image and is able to kind of punch out vector shapes from it. And we actually get a lot of options on how to cut these shapes out. And it actually, depending on what kind of image you have, if it's colorful, if there's a lot of shapes, or if it's just a solid black shape, we use different options. So I'll show you guys how to do both. I can download another solid black image. But first, I'll show how to do something with a lot of colors or grayscale. So what we're going to want to do is with our image selected, we are going to go over here in the trace bitmap window, and we're going to want to change from single scan to multiple scans. This is essentially going to create multiple different shapes versus the single scan, which just kind of looks at it once. So with multiple scans, I can actually show you what it looks like if I just did single scan on this. So I'm just going to hit apply. And you can see that it actually doesn't look that bad because the shapes on this are still pretty flat and graphic, but it didn't really get much of the detail at all. This doesn't look very good. So I'm just going to delete that. Now, if we go over to multiple scans and click this drop down, you can see we've got a couple sub options here. We're going to want to choose grays. Colors and grays work very similarly. I'll show you what colors looks like first. So if I hit apply on that, what it's going to give us here is basically something that looks just like our original image, but is comprised of vector shapes instead. So I can go ahead and delete the background there. And you can see that this is actually now a collection of different colored vector shapes. And you know that because if I go and double click on this, we get all of those nodes that I was talking about. So with this, we actually have a shape that will work for what we're trying to do. But the thing is, like I said, color isn't really a factor in what we're doing. So we're just going to go from colors to grays. And like I said, they're similar. So if I hit apply, it's going to give us something very similar to what the colors gave us, in that, you know, it's still kind of like separated everything out into like different colors, quote unquote, except now it's just shades of gray. And with this, we have the actual design that we want to have cut, done. So this is the actual design that we are essentially done with. So what you're going to want to do is just kind of, excuse me, is just kind of move it out of the way, because we're going to need to go back to the original image again. What we're going to be doing this time is creating the outline shape, which is the laser is going to use to cut the actual design out of the acrylic. So to do the outline, we're actually going to go back to single scan, because remember how I said it just makes one shape out of whatever we have. So, and you remember when I just did a regular normal without changing the settings, this is what it gave me. We're going to want to go and change this value, the brightness threshold, up significantly to about, I'd say 0.9. And you can, anytime you change the settings, you can hit update, and it's going to change what we see and basically show us what the result's going to look like. And the reason we're increasing the brightness threshold is so that without going into too much detail, the lower the threshold, basically the smaller the shapes are going to be. So you can see if I go down really low to like 0.2, it's going to give us almost nothing actually. You can see it just, it's not looking at much, but if we set it to 0.9 and update it, you can see it's going to give us almost a completely solid black shape. I'll actually set it to 0.99, which probably isn't going to change it too much. It'll just make a little bit less for us to worry about. So yeah, now we have this, and this is what we're going to use to make the outline that the laser cuts with. And you can see, I did say that we need just one solid shape, and there's still some, you know, some white spots in this design, you know, right here, right here, right here. And I could take the hard way and, you know, double click this, go into the nodes and directly edit everything here, where I go in and, you know, hand delete all of this stuff. It's a way to do it. It's not a very good way. Fortunately, there's a way we can speed this up considerably. And what we're going to do for that is just click on it, go to path up at the top, and then we're going to want to select this option, which is break apart. And when we do that, you can see it takes all of these separate shapes in it and just kind of, you know, as the tool implies, it broke them apart into separate ones. So now we can just drag off this solid cat shape and just go ahead and delete everything else. And now we just have that solid shape we're looking for. And fortunately, Inkscape also has snapping options turned on by default. So if you kind of like try and drag your objects together, they'll kind of just snap together. However, there is another way that we can bring these together if for some reason your snapping options aren't on. You can just select your outline object, then hold shift and select your main object so that we have both of them selected. You know, they both have this dotted box around it. Then we go to object. We're going to want to go down here to align and distribute. And it's going to give us some options for just aligning different objects. There's a lot of different selections here. You don't have to worry about like any of these. The only things we're going to be paying attention to are this relative to category and these two buttons right here in the middle, which are the center align options for both the x-axis and the y-axis. And one thing we want to change here is instead of having it relative to page, we want to select last selected, which is basically going to take the first selected object, the black outline, and align it to the last selected, which was the actual main design. And before I do that, I just realized I selected the JPEG image. I want to select our vectorized image instead. And then with last selected as your relative to option, you're just going to hit these two buttons right here. And you can see that they are now perfectly aligned. Let me just go ahead and take the background out of here. And now that they're aligned, what we can do is change the fill from this background object to just a stroke, because that's all we really need for the laser. It doesn't care about the fill. So we're going to go to path, and then we're going to want to go to, so let me just remember how, okay, so we want to go to objects. Sorry, I used the hotkeys a lot. We want to go to object, and we want to go to fill and stroke. This is how we're going to remove the fill and add a stroke to the object. So we are going to go here to fill, and then we're going to hit this X right here, which is going to remove that fill. And you can see that the object is gone. Don't worry, it's not actually gone. It just doesn't have a fill or stroke, so we can't see anything. To see it again, we're going to want to go to stroke paint and select this solid square next to the X. And now you can see we have an outline again. And just to see it a little better, you can go here to stroke style and just hit this plus one time. And now you're going to be able to see it a lot better. And we're going to want to do the same align thing again. We're going to align these. And you can see that they fit together perfectly. Now what we want to do is select our actual outline. And actually, hang on, let me take a look at the tools right here. Okay, right. So once these are aligned, what we're going to want to do is go to Layer, and we're going to want to go to Layer, then click Layers. And we're going to use layers just so we can kind of view our outline in an isolated view without actually having to move it like this. So what we're going to do is with layers open, we're going to go to click this plus near the bottom, and it's going to ask us, you know, what we want to name the layer, where it goes. It can either be above or below the current layer we have, which is only one layer, or as a sublayer. We're not going to work with sublayers right now. All we want to do is have above current selected, and if you want to give it a name, that's fine. I'm not going to because we only have 2 layers, so it's not hard to distinguish between layer 1 and layer 2. And so now what we're going to do is select the main design right here, then right click on it, and we're going to want to go to move to layer. We're going to select layer 2 and then hit move. And then if we go back to the layer panel and hit the eyeball next to layer 2, you can see that it's now isolated the outline for us because the main design is on the second layer and we're not viewing the second layer right now. So now we can kind of freely work with the outline without having to move around the main one. So what we're going to do now, we are approaching the end, fortunately, is we're going to want to go here to the Create Rectangles and Squares tool. We're just going to click it, which is going to activate that tool. And then we're just going to click and drag out a shape right here. Don't worry about how wide or tall it is right now. I could make it that, I could make it this, I could make it that, I could make it that. Don't worry about the shape because we can go and change it after we've created it. So you can see I made my shape here. I'm going to want to go back to Select and Transform Objects, which is the cursor tool here at the top of the left side toolbar. And then select our square. You can see it has the arrows around it, which means it's selected. Then here at the top is where we can adjust its size options. And we're going to want to, again, change our units from millimeters to inches. And we're going to want to set the width of the square to 2.7 inches. And then we're going to want to set the height of the square to 1.2 inches. And this is essentially going to be the lip of that kind of slides into the LED base. And you can see it's a bit smaller than the actual design. And that's because is a lot of, different images are different sizes. So you can see that mine is kind of big right now. That's no problem though. All we have to do is re-enable layer 2, drag select both the outline and the main design. And then we can just grab one of these top corner arrows and just kind of start dragging, making it smaller. To keep everything uniform, we just hold Control while we're doing that. And you're going to want to just drag it down so it's relatively the same, same size as the square. So something like this should be okay. If you want to make it a little smaller, that's okay, but you want to keep it around this. Anything much bigger, while still technically would be able to be cut if it's at least, not bigger than the sheet of acrylic. But if it's too big, sometimes the light just doesn't diffuse through it that well. So we want to keep it a good shape where it's, it's big enough to still, be seen pretty well, but small enough that the light goes through all of it decently. So, yeah, basically once we've scaled our object, we can go and move it here into our artboard, which is the size of the acrylic sheet we're going to be using. And yeah, now there's only really one step or a couple of steps left before this design is ready to go and be sent to us. So with it positioned within the artboard, we're going to want to once again disable layer 2. So we're just looking at the outline and the square that we have. Then we're going to want to select both of these, shift select both objects. Then we're going to want to go to path and hit union. And you can see what it's going to do is take those two different shapes and just kind of like fuse them together. So any intersecting points are basically just gone, which is really nice. You might get little things like this depending on how close your design was to the square. So with this right here, it, if I leave it as is, it's just going to be a little hole cut in the design, which is fine. At this point, it's really just personal preference. I can also just go and delete it. But yeah, it's not a huge issue if it's there or not. And if it's really big, it should still be okay, but I wouldn't worry about it because if it's too big, I'll be able to adjust some things when I'm actually doing the cutting. So don't worry about it right now. If there's anything wrong with it, I will fix it after you sent the files to me. So yeah, now that we have everything merged together, we're going to want to select the object again. It's now just one object. And we're going to want to go back here to the fill and stroke options. And there's two things we want to do. Number one is go here to stroke paint. And we're going to want to go and change the color mode from HSL, which stands for hue, saturation, lightness, and go to RGB. And then we're just going to bring this red slider all the way to the right so that the red has a value of 255 and everything else is just a value of 0, except alpha, of course. If we bring the alpha down, we're not even going to see the object. So we want to make sure alpha is at a full 100%. But besides that, green and blue are 0, red is 255. Now, the reason we're doing this is because the laser has a specific way that it identifies how it cuts things. So if the shape is red, it sees that as a cut command, which basically means the laser goes completely through the material. If it was blue, like this, it would read that as a laser engrave command, where it would basically do the same thing as a cut, but it would only do it with enough power to etch the surface. So it wouldn't go all the way through, it would just kind of draw the shape onto the acrylic. And with black, it does something somewhat different than the other two. It does a raster engraving where instead of, if my finger is the laser head, if it was red or blue, it's basically going to trace the shape exactly as it is. If it's black, it's going to do a raster engraving where the head just moves back and forth continuously, making its way from the top to the bottom. very similar to a traditional printer, actually. And it just kind of, you know, engraves out that raster shape. We don't have to worry about that though, thankfully. Like I said, we just want to make sure that red has a value of 255, which is the max it can go. Make sure the green and blue are 0, the alpha is 100. And then we're going to want to go here to stroke style. And we're going to want to change the value here from inches back to millimeters. And then in the width category, we're going to select this and put in a value of 0.01. And that's going to give us, it's essentially, you know, it's a very, very thin line, which it has to be for the laser to identify. So we're dealing with 0.01 millimeters. And you'll see it kind of disappear again. It isn't gone. You can see if I zoom in, it's still there. But this is just telling us that it's the correct width for the laser to cut. So now we just go back to our layers. We re-enable our main design. And now you can see that we have our main design here that's been vectorized. As well as the actual outline shape we're going to use to cut it. And actually with this, we're now done, save for the saving of the file, which I'll show you guys how to do. But yeah, thankfully, this is the last design step. So if you have your main design here like this, as well as your outline shape here in the artboard, and you know they're aligned together, you are ready to save it and send it to us. So good job, you made it here. I know nobody told me that they had an SVG file, but I'll show how to convert one of those as well, because it's a lot faster than the other ones. Oh, and it also looks like we had some comments. We are going to send a recording once the program is done, so you can actually look at what we did and kind of follow along at your own pace. It looks like Heather's having trouble getting it into Inkscape. But like I said, you'll have the recording so you can see exactly what I did. So let's bring a vector shape in here, or you know what, better yet, I will just take our regular JPEG cat and then trace it and keep the colors. So now we have a similar shape, but it still has the colors. So this is basically what you would be looking at if you downloaded it from Vecteezy and it came as an SVG. So it's already converted for us. But remember, like I said, it needs to be grayscale. We don't get colors in this project. So if you have an SVG, you just go to extensions, then you go to color, and you go to grayscale, and just give Inkscape a second to think. And oops, hang on there. Freaked out. And you can see that it basically took our colored vectorized image and just converted it all to grayscale. And that's how you would do it for an SVG. Also, if you wanted to, or to get the outline that we use to cut it out, what we're going to want to do is go to Object, Ungroup, to break everything apart. then what we're going to want to do is select everything again. You know it's broken apart because you can see a lot of different shapes here. Then we're going to want to go back to the fill and stroke settings, go to fill, disable it, then re-enable it. And by doing this, it's essentially set every shape to the same color. We're going to want to take it down to just totally black. Then go to path and go to union, which is going to merge it all into that one shape. And then from here, we basically repeat what I already showed you guys, where you break it apart. And now we basically have this solid black shape we can use as an outline again. So that's how you do it if you already have an SVG. And then essentially follow the steps I showed you before on how to get the outline. But yeah, so with that, we have our design done. We have the outline done. All we have to do now is save it and send it over. So to save it, you just go to File, Save As. Choose your location to save it. So I'll just save it in my desktop for now. I'm going to call it, just so I know who's who, I'll call it Zach K. Lamp Design. We want to save it as the default format, which is Inkscape SVG. You can see if I open this up, there's quite a lot of formats. We don't have to worry about any of those. We're just going to use Inkscape SVG, which is the default. So after we've named it, selected the location, have Inkscape SVG as the format, we just go ahead and hit save. It's going to save that file. And with that, you're done. Now you just have to email the file over to us. The email you can use for that is MakerSpace at deerfieldlibrary.org. So this is the email to use. And yeah, so with that, we are done. Good job, everyone. I think these are going to come out really, really nicely. Yeah, does anyone have any questions for me, or is anyone kind of still stuck? Because we do have a couple minutes left, so I can use that time to like answer questions or kind of help everyone get to where they need to be. No, okay, Karen looks good. I'm not getting any. Nobody else is telling me they have any problems. I'm looking at chat. I'm not seeing any comments. So, okay, so we do have one comment. Do phrases work? So kind of like if you just had some text. I think a phrase should actually work just fine. It would be, I think there would be a couple different ways you would make that design, or that I would go about making it. I don't really think we have time right now to go over how you would do text or lettering. So maybe if you just want to email us, I could probably give you like a quick and nerdy way that you would go about it. But yes, to answer your questions, a phrase would work. Yeah. Okay, any other questions? All right. Doesn't look like it. So yeah, all right. I think with that we can wrap up. Yeah, again, good job, everyone. Really looking forward to seeing how your projects turn out. I know we kind of like, went through a lot of different stuff. But like I said, the recording is going to be sent to you, so you can kind of review it on your own time. You know, that's definitely a good way to learn is, you know, reviewing stuff, watching it again, you know, going at your own pace definitely helps. So, yeah, if there's no other questions, I think we can finish for now. Yeah, oh, before I forget, I can also send everyone with the recording a step-by-step guide that I made. So you'll basically have a video recording as well as just a document with, I tried to make it very visual, so, you know, almost every step has an image associated with it. So you can also use that to follow along. Some things might be a little bit different on that because I made it before changing some stuff, but the broad strokes should be exactly the same. So you should have a totally fine time working with it. But yeah, thank you everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing how everything turns out. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem.